down the road, and accidentally he cut into the road right behind a truck that almost then had to go over a cliff. Both the automobiles stopped. Then the truck driver gets out of his truck. And he is big and mean and a bully. And he walks up to the clown and he draws a circle and he says, does this, and he says, stand here in this circle. Then he gets out his knife and he goes over to the clown's car and he starts cutting into the lovely upholstery, cutting up his seats. Then he turns around and the clown is smiling. So, he goes to his truck and he gets out a bat and he starts smashing the windows of the clown's car and crashing into the side of the car, and he looks over and the clown is laughing. Oh, he's really mad now. So he takes his knife out again and he starts slashing the tires, and then he turns around. The clown is laughing so hard it's hard for him to keep standing up, and the bully says, what is so funny? Clown says, while you were turned your back, I was stepping out of the circle. That really, in a nutshell, shares a lot about what being a clown is all about. Acting completely ridiculous. Seeing the world in a completely alternative way, a way different from the way normal people see the world, and gleefully letting the world know. Acting crazy. I guess you might say that the clown always does the wrong thing. The wrong thing that normal, clear-thinking, normal-minded people would think, or the way they would act. I mean, if this clown was normal and he saw someone beating up on his car, what would he do? He'd want to go over there and beat the guy up, or threaten him, or call the police and make sure that they come and have their way with him. We as Christians might say, that's not the right response. That's the wrong response. So maybe what the clown is doing is help us see that the way the world often tells us is the right response is really the wrong response. And because the clown helps us laugh and smile and enjoy seeing this wrong response, it helps us want to maybe look at the world in a different way too. And maybe act in a way that's wrong, according to the right way that the world teaches us. Everything about a clown is ridiculous. In fact, we've got a clown here that's going to show us a little bit about how ridiculous I wish I should have worn actually my priest robe so you can see like how absurd it is for a clown to be dressed like this, wearing a goofy hat, wearing a funny nose, with wacky shoes, and sometimes you might see clowns with shoes that are way too big. And what are some of the things that clowns like to do? What are some of the activities that clowns like to do? They like to make animals out of balloons. Mm-hmm. They like to juggle. Yes. They like to throw cream pies. All sorts of crazy things. And to react to the world in absurd ways. So I thought since we've got a clown here, we might take total advantage of her sensibilities, her absurd sensibilities. So I thought I might get from the audience, from our congregation, a suggestion of a common household situation. Something that just might happen in your house.
Washing the clothes.
Washing clothes. Okay, why don't you show us how a clown would wash clothes? Just a couple minutes.
Washing machine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dryer. Here. Ah, time to wash the clothes. Soap. Pants. Jacket. Hat. mental cycle.
And there we have our and brutally, I might say. And that's how about we get a suggestion of some sort of ridiculous situation. Something ridiculous. Absurd. Anything.
Toilet overflowing?
The toilet, what's absurd? What's something absurd? Like something that would be crazy that you never do.
A hot air balloon comes in your living room.
A hot air balloon comes in your living room. There we go.
Okay. All right. Reading the paper. Balloon. There you go. Comics. Get yourself at home. You want some coffee?
And there's our clown. And making it quite normal. That's not a baby. Touch. Okay, so we're going to go and ask for, because clowns don't just do take common things and certain things, but sometimes clowns will take on difficult situations. So what's a difficult situation you might experience in your life? Something that's not necessarily funny at all.
Loss of a pet.
A loss of a pet. Loss of a pet.
Flowers. Baby chicken. Egg. Okay, Egg. You're gonna fly. I know you can do it. On the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Birds fly. Did they get the wings? And the egg and the wings? And you throw them in there? That's okay. Put it back together. Oh, birdie. Fly! Oh, no. Just take the shells. Put you okay. Flowers.
And there's our clown. Clowns helped us move through a really difficult situation with some creativity and helps us see that the flow just helps us move through that situation. It brings a sense of poetry. Yeah. There's all sorts of ways that clowning is used in our world and used in performance. And it's interesting to note that this image of a clown, of a fool, was one that Paul used as he was discussing what Christianity was all about. It wasn't necessarily a funny clown, but he was using that image because he was saying, this way of seeing the world that's all about wisdom and enlightenment and superior thinking, and that's all it's about, and cleansing, that's not what it's all about. In fact, what we Christians, what we Pauline Christians, what the Jesus followers are about is following a man who came as God and died on a cross. I think I've talked before about the ways that in the ancient world it was very common for people to believe about gods that came to earth and fell and died valiantly and rose again, but nobody would think about a God coming and dying on a cross. It was the most disgusting place in the image and imagination of the ancient world. It's like saying today that God came to earth and died drunk in a flop house, suffocating on his own vomit. What would we think if we were a group of people saying, woohoo, we celebrated God and choked on his own vomit in a flop house? Woohoo, woohoo. Wouldn't people think we were crazy? Wouldn't people think that we're not to be listened to? That we've gotten the idea of what proper religion is and gotten it all wrong? God doesn't support drunk people choking on their own vomit. God wouldn't want to be seen there, especially this most important moment of his life, to make a statement. But for Paul, that was the most important statement about God. That God loves us and God loves this world, even in that most disgusting place. Maybe the only place that a clown performing would make fun of. You know, that was actually the only place in the theater that would perform about crucifixions, were clowns and fools, because it was so disgusting. Paul's like, that is what the alternative view of the world that God has. And that God's love is that far-reaching. And God's love is that deep inside of you. No matter what you may be going through, no matter what you might be feeling, and you think God would never want to go there or accept it or love it, that's the most powerful place that God is. You, all of you, who accept the idea that God could come and die on a cross, you are fools. Fools in the way that fool that's jumping in and out of the circle, that's helping us understand absurdity in a common way, common things in an absurd way, and it's all brings a sense of joy, and a sense of liveliness and creativity and possibility. And how do we act when we have that alternative vision and when we own this understanding of God and let that live in us? Well, we respond by acting opposite of the way normal people experience the world. You know, Paul says when we are reviled, we bless. When we are persecuted, we endure. When we are scandalized, we are slandered, we speak kindly. Like a crazy person would act. That is the way that Christians are invited to behave. That's the way we're all invited to behave. Let that God live in us, and just act the opposite. Sometimes it happens even when we don't expect it. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think I will. I think many of you have known that there's something about my mother and my relationship with my mother, and it's been a difficult one for most of my life. And my mother, for any number of reasons, was always on me to pick up the dirty towels and to put coasters on my drinks and make sure that, do that sort of thing. And that's what my mother, that's pretty much the only conversations that my mom would have with me. Make sure I got to church on time, got out of bed, and that's right. So I developed a real antagonistic relationship with my mother. And because I didn't like being told all the time what I was supposed to do. She never really asked me about much else. And so I did things like get in fights with my mother. And I would do such things as make fun of my mother. In fact, that was probably the impetus of doing stand-up. So I'd read her letters, like her actual letters. I'd read them on stage. And, everybody thought that was really funny. Because we all have mothers like that. And then, of course, we're all about her household chores and all that sort of thing. And time went on, and we came to discover that my mother suffered from mental illness, and she had depression. And so she started getting on medication. And her need to tell me about wet towels and the coasters and all that subsided somewhat. And we developed actually a pretty good relationship. And then about 7 years ago or so, her medications and that sort of thing started to stop working, which is common for people that are older with mental illness. And so I began to realize that my mother, she didn't want to talk much anymore. She was really depressed, even though she kept taking medications. And when I go to visit, again, all she wanted to ask me about is, but now she's much weaker. Did you pick up your wet towel? Is there a coaster under that drink? Where's the TV changer? Did you close the refrigerator? And there was part of me that just wanted to just lash out at her and get really mad. But then something in me caused me to stop. And I decided just to completely agree with her. So she said, "Did you pick up your wet towel?" I said, "You know what, let me go and check. Let me go and check and see." "Did you shut the refrigerator door?" I'll go and check and see that. And even though there was part of me that just wanted to scream back, there was also the sense of peace that took me over. Because I was not getting in this antagonistic place. I was acting actually the opposite of the way I wanted to react. And I found a strange sort of peace filling the house. Because my mother's need wasn't so much to tell me what to do, but to sort of just engage me. And that's the only way that she could engage me. And when I was kind to her, there was a real sort of love that took over our conversations, as limited as they were. Well, I went to visit her this week, and she's now in a nursing home, and she's basically unresponsive. And you go to see her, and she just can hardly talk, and her eyes are closed most of the time. And so there's not much to do. So my dad and I come to visit, and we'll have some snacks and this and that, and in her little room that doesn't have a lot in it. And we were getting ready to go and watch TV, and we were getting ready to go. And as I turned to leave, I heard this voice as clear as a bell go, "What about the pop?" I said, "What? What about the pop? That pop is sitting on the table. It's going to spill. It's going to ruin pictures." And it was really like that kind of voice. And I was like, oh my gosh, I heard my mother talking with that kind of energy for like 8 years. And I said, "Oh, I'll give the pop or whatever." And I left thinking, this is what we need to do. We need to put pop and wet towels in my mom's room, and it'll bring her to life. And even if we don't do that, it was such a wonderful sort of sign that there still is a lot of life in my mom, even though most of the time she can't show it. It was sort of God's holy foolishness of weaving this experience that oftentimes is so anger-inducing and creating it as a flower, a beautiful, inflatable flower of hope. There are so many ways that this spirit of resurrection, this spirit of life, that indeed is always seeking to jump outside the circle, when so many other angry and dark emotions could be experienced. And it's the adventure of faith to find out ways that we can do that in our lives, and as a church, ways that we can do it that surprise us, that get us over our anger, that get others over theirs. Discovering that indeed we are wonderful, crazy fools, clowns, for the sake of Christ. And the more colorful, the better. So I invite all of you today to claim our heritage as clowns for Christ. Willing and able to indeed speak kindly when we are reviled, to endure when we persecute, to bless when we are slandered, and to see what else we can do in just turning the world upside down every step of the way. And as we do that, our wonderful singers are going to come up and sing a song, and all of you are going to be invited to receive a red nose.